Welcome to the Finding Free Thought podcast.
This podcast is funded by you. To support our work, please consider making a purchase from our Free Thought shop. Check out my campsite at campsite.bio/goodresonance, where you can follow me on social media, make a donation, subscribe to my newsletter, check out my essential oils offerings, and grab my restorative teas ebook. Please subscribe to the audio version of this podcast on Apple and Podbean and the video version on YouTube and Rumble.
Be sure to check out my 6-episode sci-fi comedy series, Simon Esler's Dystopian Imaginarium, along with my 60-minute comedy special, Theorize About Conspiracies, and my 3-season hit show, Worlds Within, all on Rise TV. And don't forget to hit up SimonEsler.com for all of my work, to join my newsletter, for links to purchase my NFTs, make donations, and follow me on all social media. You can also join my locals community, Team Free Thought, at teamfreethought.locals.com, where I'll be offering subscribers previews of new sketch comedy material, documentary work, and private broadcasts for supporters only. As a member of Team Free Thought, $5 a month gets you all of that, plus a 15% discount at the Free Thought shop. Welcome to the Finding Free Thought podcast. We have a little bit of a different setup today. We were improvising and we decided we wanted to do this episode based on a whole bunch of experiences we have had with the sexualization of children, which is really a hot topic right now. A lot being discussed. And one of the big things that we wanted to drive home today was that the sexualization of children in our society, while there may be some very clear political examples going on, for example, a lot of people fearing this coming from the left, it's actually happening on both sides and has really always been happening within our society. It's been a big problem. We have never truly honored and respected children in the way that they need to be respected, especially considering the development of sexuality. That's been a mess for a long time. This planet has a pedophilia problem, I would say.
Yeah.
Generally speaking. So today we are going to go through some of the experiences we've had as a family. We're, of course, just wrapping up Pride Month here in Toronto. And this is not just going to be an example of those things coming from Pride, but also examples of this occurring that had nothing to do with Pride. Examples that are coming from maybe even like a more hetero angle than perhaps like a gay or lesbian or any of those other angles within that umbrella of sexual identities.
Angles.
Yeah, there's many angles.
It's just what's appropriate or not.
Yeah.
So whatever angle.
And I'm just going to go and say that adult sexuality is never appropriate for children. Ever. Never, ever. So let's start.
We feel.
Well, okay, sure. I'm just going to say I'm right. I'm just going to say I'm right. Now, you don't want to go with the certainty. I'm going to go with the certainty on this one. So
for me.
I know. For you are. Let's just should we do them in the order that we have written them, or
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the other day we were at a local park, and all of a sudden this burst of children, this huge horde of children emerges and starts circling the park. Now I'll note that this particular park is right next to a public school, and so what it turned out being was a children's pride parade, and there were children with big signs and children's with the pride flag, and they were all marching in little groups and chanting.
These are even younger kids, right? They're not even sort of the older, like grade 8 or whatever, like 13-year-olds. These are, kids that are junior kindergarten, senior kindergarten. They're like 5-year-olds and up. So surely they're not able to understand the complexity of what they're parading about. And what that even means.
So here's one of the main issues. It's based on what we just said, is that it involves adult sexuality.
Yeah. So they're parading adult sexuality.
Yeah.
I know it's about identity, and they've kind of like really made this sort of like goopy little thing with like identity and sexuality. So that's like a whole discussion.
Yep.
But, and again, the funny thing is like our kids have no idea at all what's going on. In fact, I was very naive about it at first until I saw more of the parade. I just thought it was an end of year celebration.
Yeah, me too. I was like, oh, cute, a little parade from the school. But it was actually hyper political, hyper tied up in adult sexuality, which is part of the problem. I think this is why you have actually a lot of gay people standing up against this now. Like people, you know, you can go on Instagram and follow Gays Against Groomers. And these are like conservative gay people who are against gender ideology. They're overtly calling out sexual content in children's faces for pride and the idea of using pride to expose children to adult sexuality. You know, there's endless videos coming out right now of just like naked adults.
Yeah,
Adults
and
naked
that's
at
the
the parade,
thing
you
that
know,
I
and-
think we had talked about also before. You know, when I went to Pride when I was in my early 20s, it was definitely about increasing your sexual expression, even for the people that I was with that were hetero. So, for whatever reason, it was always tied to sharing that with people, like no matter what you were. So
I
to
was
me,
a
it
young
always
hetero man
seemed
and I
like
was
a
pumped.
sexuality celebration.
Yes.
And again, the identity and sexuality blending thing. But I didn't. Once I had gone a couple times, I started to think, oh, well, I, first of all, don't feel like I have a place there. It's not for me. Interesting kind of to observe and get a sense about what the values are of these kinds of events, for sure. You know, and whether or not you're aligned with something like that. But seeing children at these events where people are just sometimes fully naked, I'm taken aback as a single adult who doesn't, you know, really feel threatened, but is just kind of in shock seeing just a naked man appear.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't feel threatened, but a kid could easily feel threatened and in shock and not know what to. There wouldn't even necessarily be a response to even make a concept about what you see.
You have,
It's
in a
so-
wild sense, you have no way of knowing how it's going to impact that child. In the most dangerous, frightening sense, you don't know how it's going to unfold inside of them. All we can say is that adult sexuality is not appropriate for children. Mm-hmm. And in these instances,
and I mean,
that's
I
what's
think
happening.
a lot of us can even think of our own selves in our own childhood and things that we felt uncomfortable with as children, whether that was actually abuse or whether that was just somebody like crossing lines. It doesn't really matter because it's something that you didn't want. And probably most people have moments of that where they felt it in their body that this was wrong as a kid, that they shouldn't have been exposed to this or around these people or whatever it was on the spectrum. And so I think when we're like walking in the city, I'm watching my kids' body language and I can see that they see unsettling things. And it's not about erasing all unsettling things, but we have a lot under our control.
Yes.
And we're also imposing our, you know, society is putting like values and Pride is considered a family values sort of celebration.
It's constantly marketed this way.
I do question that when they're also promoting it as a family values celebration and an acceptance celebration. And then I go to observe the values in these places and it's pretty, like the body responds. The body gets freaked out. The body's on alert. Like my kids aren't like, and we're not taking them into those places, but the city becomes alive with Pride. And so that does increase sexuality, and it's not just like gay, lesbian, anyone on that spectrum. It increases the allowance of sexuality for hetero people too.
Yeah, well, so I'll say, looking back, it's like you said that when we were younger, we saw it as that. It was a chance for that. When I was a young, goonish bachelor, I was just pumped about Pride because it meant like more women in bikinis and like the freedom to not just be more sexual myself, but that I knew that there was going to be all this like open sexuality. And so, you know, as like a young man who's just like interested in trying to hook up with women, that whole scene, it was just that. It was just that. So I'm thinking, if that's what my like young adult mind and body picked up on, why the hell are kids being invited to any of that? What
in that energy,
in that energy, realm. In that vibe, exactly, where it's like nudity, not just nudity, because there's nothing wrong with adult nudity. Technically, in the right context, depends. Like our, you know, families see each other nude to an extent.
It's how it's being framed.
But it's culture and context, right? And there is sexual context and sexual culture going on. It's like one of the videos that came out this year that was very controversial was just like someone yelling about lube in front of all these children, you know? And these are very, very, that's highly sexual connotation. That children pick up on things like this, even subtle things like that. Like you said, they feel it in their body. We watch it, which
There's
I think.
no reasoning behind it.
So let's talk about the brunch then, because that was actually what you observed. You were watching our kids' bodily responses to this pride brunch that was going on. I guess that's what you said you saw, right? You saw them react to it. So we were on Bloor Street. We're on downtown Toronto in the West End, and we're walking along Bloor Street. And this is an example. This happens to be an example of how pride does increase the amount of public adult sexuality, because there was it's called Drag Me to Brunch, which is somewhat reminiscent of Drag the Kids to Pride, a very controversial event that also got called out recently. But this is sort of a cafe that has drag queens that come and do a performance for brunch, which is fine. But the particular bar this was at, there was no front wall. It was sort of like an open, it was open to the world. They have like a bar that's facing out to the street so that people can sit at this bar and be interacting with people who are walking by on the sidewalk. So we're moving east along Bloor Street, and all of a sudden there is two women in bikinis, and their bikinis are stuffed with money, like lined with dollar bills. And they're sexually posing. They're being very overtly sexual.
They're basically almost hanging out into the street,
looking to gather attention. They were trying to draw people in, from what I saw.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
This was their way of inviting people into the brunch. So we have two young boys. One is 4, one is 7. And how are young men or young boys supposed to become young men that are healthy, who don't objectify women, who don't do any of those things, when there's things like borderline naked women covered in money? What value system does that project? What value system in terms of sexuality, adult sexuality, does that offer a young developing mind? How are they going to interpret that? To me, that's horrifying. I can't think of a way to objectify women more overtly than to put them half naked in front of children covered in money.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess they chose to do that as women, as empowered women or whatever have you. But at the same time, I think put the show somewhere else
in an adult space
where the kids can't see you because it's Sunday afternoon and families are walking through, and so it's more it's very violating, even on an auric level, to get that close to someone within a couple meters of someone who's in that place. This is not even seeing it on TV. It's very different than that. So it's going to give you a real physical sensation.
Their bodies are picking up on the information in those auras, in those people being sexual. Our children's bodies are mingling with their bodies in the terms of auras.
Yeah.
So they're sensing that to an extent in whatever way they're going to interpret that, which again, we can't really know.
Yeah.
That's what's really most tricky and I would say damaging. So it even, it continued to sort of escalate, because by the time we wanted to come back that way through the neighborhood, at this point there was one of the drag queens involved in the show, and now it had completely spilled onto the sidewalk, and this drag queen was out in the streets flirting with old men, rubbing themselves, flirting with these old men across the street, being highly sexual, highly suggestive. And so again, the point is not that this is a drag show, because the initial instance was something that was technically or potentially hetero in nature, had nothing to do with any of that. It's the adult sexuality, and this drag queen being so sexual on the streets in broad daylight in the middle of the afternoon, and it being justified under the umbrella of pride, being all adults in the city can now be hypersexual because it's Pride Month. It's fine. Forget about the kids, I guess, even though you're continuously saying Pride is full of family-friendly, kid-friendly events, when it got so bad that we actually had to change our whole day. We couldn't walk through the neighborhood anymore. We had to turn around with the kids, go and get on the subway and get out of that neighborhood, because this Drag Me to Brunch event was literally spilling adult sexuality into the streets to the point that it was unsafe for our kids.
Yeah. And I mean, you can make a choice, right? Someone might make the choice to go anyway, and then you naturally have a conversation about what you just saw. But for me in that moment, it felt wrong. Because at some point, you know, when we have friends we've talked to, and the older their kids get, like maybe they're around 9, 10, and they're homeschoolers too, but they start to think more, right? As your consciousness develops, your personality develops, you're who you are in the world changes, and now you're like, what's going on here? So they're asking questions and they're seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
But, the kids are very young, and based upon just on their first bodily reaction from like the women going by that one way, I was like, why would we bring them towards?
What did you see how did you see the kids react? Because I missed that.
I don't know. I don't know how to really say it with words, I guess.
You just knew it as a mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, very, very disturbing. And so, this gets into some of the other experiences that we've had. I want to go back to the park, actually, because in the same park where there was a young children's pride parade, of course, because of this neighborhood, you find certain pockets of Toronto that are more woke, I guess, that seem to be more impacted by this particular political leaning and these particular ways of looking at the world.
Toronto's pretty woke overall.
Toronto is overall extremely saturated by wokeness, but the bathroom signs have been ripped off of the bathroom doors in this park to gender neutralize them, I have to assume, given the nature of the neighborhood. And we actually watched this confuse a young boy who was just trying to go to the washroom. He walked into the wrong washroom, realized he was in what was clearly the women's washroom, and then awkwardly came out and had to go into the other washroom. This is supposed to support children in being less impacted by gender bias or by the gender construct of the binary.
Yeah.
What did you see?
I saw several people being awkward about it.
Yeah.
And we know the park. And when Asher ran to the bathroom, I thought, oh my gosh, is he going to go? Which one's he going to go into? But he knew in his body, because we've been to this park so many times, he just went for the washroom. He remembers in his body where the washroom is. And same with like myself and all of us. But definitely a few kids walking into one or the other bathroom and then noticing like, oh, there's mostly guys in here, there's mostly girls, and then walking out because they feel uncomfortable. And so as much as the idea that gender neutral bathrooms sound really good and it would make people feel comfortable and it would be more inclusive, this particular scenario was nothing but making other kids feel uncomfortable now.
Absolutely.
And so which of the kids are feeling comfortable, I guess, is my question.
Whose comfort matters?
Whose comfort matters, and how do we determine, changing these ways for people's comfort?
But also, it precedes the ripping down of the signs. It proceeds based on the notion that gender as a spectrum is a fact. And it's just a theory. It's just opinion. Some people want to see gender as a spectrum. Fine. That's fine. But to me, it's not a proven fact that gender is a spectrum. It's one way to view the world.
Well, in terms of gender as a spectrum, I can see it as, like, if we're talking about, like, whether or not you have, like, masculine and feminine
But Jordan
qualities.
Peterson talked about this in What is a Woman? He said you can have temperament and personality that are varying in degrees of masculinity and femininity. Sure, someone has a very masculine temperament, a very feminine temperament, a very masculine personality, a very feminine personality. You can still measure these things without going into gender theory. We were always able to talk about that.
Your
we
gender
have always had
doesn't
that.
change because you, for example, are a woman with more masculine energy than another man.
These are ancient ideas.
So it's like you can be a man with more feminine energy than another woman. Yeah, and that's changed. Now you just are a woman.
Just automatically a woman. And, you could even look at it from the lens of, like, Hermetic principles or ancient Chinese knowledge, like the yin and the yang, right? As the masculine and the feminine.
Yes,
they are always, they're perpetually co-creating each other. So there's always a swaying balance of the masculine and the feminine, and that is true within each of us. We all have a certain degree of the masculine and the feminine in a dance and an interplay within us, and the way that that comes out in who we are as beings, of course it's going to be a unique blend of the masculine and the feminine. These are the building blocks of our reality to a certain extent.
You can actually find that out in human design as well. Like, when you go deeper into it, you can look at, in the I Ching and stuff, and look at how much of your chart is masculine and how much is feminine.
Right.
And so if you're a man or a woman, you can sometimes get some understanding there where you're like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a man, but I have all these qualities. And they're not bad qualities.
Exactly.
You just have to be who you are. And so that part of, like, the pride message and the identity piece, I agree with. Because it's like, if that's who you are... but you don't have to change, like, your sex because your sort of identity is on this spectrum.
Well, the history of, like, gay rights is very interesting, and it's a very beautiful story, and in fact, a lot of it is rooted here in Toronto, because there was genuinely, like, a standoff between gay people and the police here.
Yeah.
And this is how Pride started.
Yeah.
It was actually, gay people taking to the streets, and because there had been raids of bathhouses. And they got very violent, they were very inappropriate, and it did come from a bias against gay people. This is true. There is a true struggle.
Yes.
There is a true story here. And so some of this did rise up organically as grassroots, as people seeking their own rights, and I believe that is beautiful. And I think what is ugliest about what it's become is that this true story of justice and equality that actually did unfold has been undermined and turned into a really horrific form of propaganda that is targeting children now. And that actually undermines the truth and beauty of the gay rights story. It's very tragic. It's very sad, because it sort of stomps on it, because then you have this polarity occurring. You have now right-wing people taking it to another extreme and saying, we never should have allowed gay rights. We never should have allowed gay marriage. That was our mistake. And there ends up being this polarization that actually harms the progress that has been made, the real grassroots progress. And I think, that really, again, that speaks to, I think, why you have groups like Gays Against Groomers, and, you have the Flashing Green, I think it's called, Substack, and that was the article written by the gay Disney employee, standing up against gender ideology and the idea that we need to have gender ideology and sexual content in grades kindergarten to grade 3. This is why I think you have people standing up, because they're saying, this has nothing to do with us. I never agreed to be lumped into this category, into this idea that masculine and feminine don't really exist in the way that we thought, or even male and female biology don't exist in the way that we thought. And now anyone can be a woman. And again, I would say this also, that one of the main differences to me, and this is just my opinion, as a hetero cis male, that there's a woman and then there's a trans woman. And when you take away the word trans, you're erasing part of that person's struggle. They did not develop as a woman. So to me, their struggle in becoming a trans woman, let's say they became an adult and they were like, nope, I want to transition, and they did it. This is very difficult. That's a very difficult life. That's a very difficult thing to do. So to me, being involved in just saying, nope, that's a woman now, not a trans woman, well, why are you erasing how hard it has been for this person? Like, that to me makes no sense at all. And so to me, it makes more sense to identify someone as a trans woman when they're a trans woman. They're not a woman, because they have not been involved in the struggle of a woman from birth. Like, women have been so horrifically oppressed. The war on women has been so real. It's so ancient. The war against fertility, even, like the female capacity for fertility, for life-giving, for birth, is so ancient. And all of that is being undermined, in my opinion, by the idea that anyone can be a woman. I think that's very deeply harmful. And, you can get into the way women's sexuality has been misused, like the female sexual presence in the world. We can look at the strip club, right? This is another thing that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, that's
right. So
the
on
other
Yonge
side
Street,
of it.
what's it called again?
Brass rail.
Brass rail. Okay, so this is an example of how just sort of hetero culture. This is not coming from left wing LGBTQ anything. On Yonge Street, there's a strip club called the Brass Rail, And the whole building is covered in giant posters of naked women being very sexual in an adult way. So when we're on Yonge Street, we're constantly like, oh, God, we can't take the kids there. What are we going to do? Or we like rush past it, or we try to find ways to distract our children as we're moving past it so that that's not where their attention goes, because exposing them to adult sexuality is developmentally inappropriate. And there's lots of good research on that, I would say. Look it up if you want to do your own research.
Yeah, and just lots of advertising and stuff like that. They see it, they pick up on it.
So the advertising, we can connect this as well to, we were on the subway platform.
Yes.
Okay, so we're on the subway platform, and they have TVs on the subway that are running like a constant news cycle. And within that news cycle, there's ads that are placed into, what people are watching on the platform. And an ad came on for Queer as Folk.
Yes. And
again, this was an extremely adult, sexual moment in the show. And our children are standing there staring at the screen, this blasting into their minds and bodies. That is the same as the brass rail putting all the strippers on the outside of the building. It's the same thing. It has nothing to do with gayness or any, you know what I mean? Like, my problem is not Queer as Folk as a show. It's that you took the most sexual part of the show and you put it into a public space that's supposed to be kid-friendly, family-friendly. And you didn't do that. Why the hell is the TTC doing that?
I think that's probably, for me, my biggest feeling about all this right now, because so many people are saying, if you're against what Pride is doing, you're a bigot, but maybe we just need to look at how we're sexualizing children still in media and in ads and just all of the grooming that both sides can be a part of or not.
Yeah.
Maybe the Pride stuff is just is heated right now. And I also encourage people, on both sides to look at where they're programmed, because there's programming. There's always programming.
You were raised on Earth as well, so.
The left has programming, the right has programming, and everyone, all of us in between, because probably most of the people listening are somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Most of humanity is in between, I think. But we can be polarized, and then you can look at the programming. So something to see.
So we also had this experience at the Family Friendly Book Festival. This is something else I wanted to bring up.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like all these things. And there's endless, because society
is like this.
Has been just sexualizing children, and they just go, and women, right? So even adult women, we see in ads, things like that. And now just adults in general, man, woman, whatever. But, so it's just, we have a lot of examples.
We have a lot. A lot has been happening. I mean, it's summer in the city, so, we're going to experience a lot of it. But so, we went to a family-friendly book festival. This is midday in, most of the festival is set up around a park. We're walking down the street, and there's numerous stages set up where authors are reading their material. And this was just like a part of the structure of the festival. So we're walking north on... What was it? Yonge Street? Where was it? No. Anyways, just north of Queen's Park. We're walking north, and this woman is on stage, and she is going into, I guess, some of her material that's based on Star Wars. And she starts talking about how she always wondered if C-3PO had sex with R2-D2. And she goes into detail about whether R2-D2 had a hole for C-3PO's metal shaft, and starts discussing in detail these two robots from Star Wars performing sodomy on each other. Now, our children know about Star Wars. This is even more disgusting and dangerous because Star Wars is promoted to children. There's children's Star Wars content. So we're walking down the street with our kids, and this person is going on and on about Star Wars porn at a family-friendly book festival, okay? Now, this technically, again, it has nothing to do with Pride. It has nothing to do with any of that. This is just disgusting sexual content in a public space that we're told is safe for children. And that's not safe for children. That's especially dangerous for children because it's sexualizing in an adult way something that is marketed to children. And so at this point, we don't know what of that our children absorbed. We just had to move on with the day. There's nothing you can do because
we're just hoping their like deafness sort of feature that they have sometimes
that they had something else they were
was
zoomed in
going
on,
and that their like inner vision was just like a whole imaginative world, and that they didn't hear anything.
But there's also there's subliminal. There's a subliminal level of this where we absorb. Right, we are madly absorbing everything around us. Our brain's job is to help us focus on a small part of what we're absorbing and to filter out the incredible amount of information that we're getting so that we're not constantly overwhelmed, right? This is part of what autism is, where some of those filters, they don't function in the same way and people are absorbing too much info and their filters make it difficult for them to process the world, right? And so on some level, our children are absorbing that, right? Once they're exposed, they're exposed. This is why people have uncovered a lot of subliminal programming and things like Disney. You have like the word sex in the clouds in Aladdin, and you have breasts and vaginas and penises hidden in all their movies. The reason that's put in by people who are pedophiles and groomers, the reason why that's implemented into content is because subliminal programming goes very, very deep into our being. And so it's not just about what our kids overtly notice. Something in the background is dangerous for them. Something in the background of a situation in the world, something in the background of a movie, that is very dangerous for a developing mind. It goes deep into their system, and when it's repeated over and over again, and then matched up with some weird stuff that's being taught at schools, well, of course it's misleading children everywhere, and that's something we were talking about as well, is that thank God our children are unschooled, because even though they're going to be exposed to a certain amount of propaganda in the world and in culture naturally, they're not then going to public school where all of this is being built upon and reflected and highlighted and amplified and repeated. So of course, if a child's in school and they're going on and on about transgender sexuality and they're talking about all of this to children, and then they get on that subway platform and they see that hypersexual ad for Queer as Folk, well, yeah, they're going to start to put two and two together, right? They're going to start to build that worldview because they're being saturated in public and in their 8-hour-a-day, 5-day-a-week school experience. It's really, it's extremely disturbing, and it's coming from both sides. What else did we have here? I want to look at your list. Oh, yes, the book at the library. Okay, so I saved this, and I'm sure this book is controversial or has been identified as controversial by many people. So there's a book that our son picked up called The Bare Naked Book.
And he knew, because he brought it over, like, going, yeah, look at this book. Like, and I'm going, what about that book? Like, I've never seen it before. But I think he was picking up on something. Like, why did he bring it over? Like,
I don't know.
Like, he brought it over as if to show us something. Like, he wanted us to see something. Anyway.
So we let him flip through a little bit of it while we watched, because we both had a bad feeling.
Right
because
away.
Well, you know what? When there's
I was like, this is not smelling right at all. This book looks, I don't know. But then let's see,
Yeah, you try to stay open, right? You're not trying to infiltrate them with your bias, right? You want to keep a certain amount of openness. But it got to a point where it's like, nope, and we literally ripped it out of his hands and took it away. So I did a bit of research. I looked at it myself, and of course, this book is an update. The Bare Naked Book was originally written in the 1980s, mid-1980s. And it was groundbreaking at the time because it was the first book that had children naked, and it was talking about their genitalia. These are penises, these are vaginas. When you're naked, this is what's going on. And it went through all the body parts, right? So it went through shoulders and eyes and all that. It did all that, but it just didn't skip over genitalia. It included it. So at the time, it was quite revolutionary. So then these woke people got their hands on this book and they remade it and totally saturated it with woke propaganda. So now, when you get to the page that's supposed to identify genitalia and say, this is a penis, this is a vagina, it just says there's no names for anything. It just says, whatever you have is fine. Whatever you call it is fine. It just leaves it totally vague. And so, of course, the drawings are like trans children in a way where it's like you can't quite tell if this is a boy or a girl. Then it gets to adult bodies, same thing. You have like the mixed bag of adult bodies. You have a trans person who has scars, so a woman who had a mastectomy with the scars. yeah, you have, all the different sort of woke, the woke body type panoply that they want to expose children to when children can't possibly understand what's going on there. And so this whole book ended up, it's been very controversial because they took an original book and just turned it into crazy propaganda. And the other thing that we noticed was that the language in it was so hypersexual.
The first thing that I saw was all different kinds of hair and saying that the hair, and they were using like words to describe hair, and the one was called dripping hair. And I thought, dripping hair, that really, I don't know, it just creeps me out. Why using that word to
There were tons of
describe
examples
hair?
of that. It was like moist, dripping,
warm,
bodies.
Yeah, it
There
was
was
unsettling. I guess it could just be my like adult fears too, but I'm
No,
not.
there were
I'm
a few
gonna
of them
trust. I would
know.
always trust it.
Yeah.
It's just something to ponder, but I of course would always trust my first response. Like,
Yeah.
especially with stuff like that. It's like you don't have to second guess yourself if your first instinct is to do that. But.
Well, that was our feeling. Then I confirmed that it was propaganda. We had a feeling. We had a bad feeling. We pulled it away. We didn't pull it away for political reasons. I didn't know it was woke propaganda. I just responded being like, nope, this isn't safe. Something's wrong here, and pulled it away.
Yes.
Then I followed up and was like, oh yeah, of course it had all these weird words. Honestly, this book, I've never seen a clearer example of grooming in my life.
Yeah,
when you have subtle forms of sexualized words talking about body parts being moist and dripping and warm, and you're like, what are you up to there?
It's like, how
but
obvious
then
could you be?
so
Actually, like, I was not expecting it to be that obvious.
It was disturbing as hell.
And it was like, well, isn't this obvious? But unfortunately not. And so I guess my question is to, like, everybody is, like, whether you have kids or not, what is healthy for kids to see? Like, what is healthy for us to share with the world? And how can we make, like, society safer for kids, whether you're having kids or not? And I guess that's, what bothers me right now is how little we care about children. And I used to be that person. Like, I really didn't care, like, in my 20s about kids. Like,
that's why we were both like, Pride's just more sexual. Great, hooray.
Like,
then you have kids and you're like, wait a minute.
I didn't care. I mean, there were some people I knew that cared about children and stuff like that. Like when I was in social work, many of my friends and peers I knew worked with children. And I was just like, I never want to deal with children, like, on that level in mental health, and has just stayed in sort of the adult realm. And I myself was not at a place of wanting to have kids. So I didn't have that view of society where I walked through society sort of with the lens of a child.
Yes.
I never did that. I didn't care about it.
Yep.
And and it's okay. But now I do care because I have my kids and my whole lens has changed.
Well, and it's meaningful in many ways.
And also things have changed a lot in all that time.
For children, things have changed too, though. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, even in the last 3-4 years, things have changed quite a lot. And like I said before, people that I talked to before who I guess were, more in that camp of, like, I guess wokeness or whatever. I understood the identity piece. I really liked that like people could be unique individuals and like all this stuff. I was like, I agree. Yes, this is good. Because I'm looking to be seen and be accepted for who I am too. Like, doesn't anyone want that? That's what we all want. Let's be real. But I didn't see all the other things at first, and some of the things that I did feel I ignored. And I overrode those feelings with my mind because I was like, well, da-da-da-da-da. This can be reasoned and this could be reasoned. Only to later find out. But, movements do change too. And there's nothing wrong with being a part of something and then saying, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. Things have changed.
Or I was wrong about it.
Yeah, or the values themselves have changed.
Well, I mean, what tricked me was like, oh, I see. These people were oppressed because of their sexuality. So now they express their sexuality in some big celebration to be like, hey, our sexuality is not oppressed anymore.
Yes. Yes. That makes sense.
You know, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Now I'm like, whoa. No.
But it's still fine if it's for adults.
It's not just that. But that's the thing, is it's a hyper public event. First of all, it's a month long. Okay, which still is excessive to me. The fact that Pride is a full month long is so excessive, in my opinion, and that's just my loose opinion. Fine, whatever.
Excessive or not, it's interesting to note what our society deems important enough to have a whole month.
Exactly.
So
why is
all.
that
Like,
the thing that gets
the
a full
money,
month?
the advertising. That's
what about
I
Women's
see.
Pride? Why isn't there a Women's Pride Month? Haven't women also been impressed for all of history?
I know.
You know? A full month celebrating women. No? No? Not gonna happen.
Well, yeah, so that's why
Because you're just birthing persons that chest feed now. That's all that you are.
So it's more about, like, if you want to, I don't care, celebrate for a year, celebrate the rest of your life. Like,
no,
you know,
but
it's not about that. It's about what society's trying to get you to focus on. What is your attention being pulled? Yeah. Do you want to celebrate this for a month or not?
What kind of cultural gravity do we give something? Yeah. And Pride and all the wokeness and the whole acronyms of LGBTQ plus A, I can't keep up with it, which I don't plan to. But my point is that all of that is uplifted in a way where it's given cultural gravity, where it's impossible not to talk about it. It's impossible not to discuss it, whoever you are now. You have to, because it's in everything. It's everywhere. It has all the funding. It has all the largest platforms. All the biggest news and media organizations are pumping it up. Disney's going crazy with it. You know, so then you're forced. It has so much cultural gravity, then you're forced into discussing it to an extent on their terms. Because then it gets into the whole language of gender ideology, and you start having to be pulled into these discussions. And for me, I just don't want to use gender ideology. I think gender, masculine, feminine are all easily discussed without the terms of gender ideology. So my personal choice is to raise my children without gender ideology. They can still not be bigoted. They can still understand and be introduced to different ways of life, people that are trans and gay and lesbian. That's still easy to discuss with a child without gender ideology. It's not requisite. We already had the language and the terms to discuss these complex issues. It already existed in human culture and language. We did not need a whole new system invented by old men pedophiles. We didn't need that. We never needed that. And to me, the irony is very, very thick if you're looking at comparing gender ideology with something like critical race theory, which says that we have to basically destroy the current society that we have and rebuild it because it was founded by old racist men. And so, like, it all has to be abolished and redone because of those rotten foundations, allegedly. But then when you go and look at the rotten foundations of gender ideology and say, hey, it was these old white men who happen to be pedophiles, they actually started this. Well, why can't we then tear down gender ideology under the same premise? Shouldn't that be abolished?
Old white men?
Yeah, same thing, right? Its roots are just as rotten as the roots of, you know, there's the claim that America and Canada, all these countries are just founded by old racist men who abused women and abused, they were like disgusting bigots. And so their inherent hate is now systemically in everything. Okay, well then gender ideology must be filled with pedophilia then, I guess, from these old white men who were uplifted. Why doesn't it apply?
Well,
why doesn't it apply in the same way?
I guess that argument just can't be used. The old white man argument is not nuanced enough.
It's not.
So it's not actually going to work to just blanket it. I mean, the systems should collapse anyway.
It all has to be torn down.
Maybe not because they're old white men.
Exactly. You have two things going on. We have the collapse of our old systems.
Just be careful, like, again, the, like, pulling to, like, be like, because it's the old white men, or is it just something that needs to happen for the benefit of humanity?
Yeah.
For something we don't know, for a reason we don't know.
We're building a new society in many ways, but it's going to be a chaotic collapse. But what is the true context of the collapse?
Yeah.
What is the true context of the rebuilding?
Yeah.
And I would say that, you know, when you look at gender ideology and the results, well, actually, it's kind of telling that there was these old men using pedophilia to found all this because it is being used to groom children. it is now being used to expose children to sexuality in ways that they weren't before. So you had the original problem of like hetero culture exposing children to sexuality already. That was wrong to begin with. It was already there. Now you have gender ideology being used to put children in these drag shows where men are shaking their booty holes in front of children for no reason at all. And you're claiming that this is to help children not become bigots. And there's like men in thongs. And like one of the videos I saw the other day was just a really old man in his gross tighty whities twerking in front of children in this parade.
Jesus.
Why? Like, you can see this man's whole package shaking in his tighty. Why is he twerking for children?
I know.
Because really, if you're a pedophile and your fetish is being sexual in front of children, well, guess what? Pride's a pretty sweet deal, you know? Which is really, really gross and unfortunate because that does not represent, like I said, it doesn't represent the actual story of oppressed people rising up and getting their rights.
Well, I guess
it doesn't
like you
represent
said, that's
it.
why there are these gay and lesbian groups who are, some of them are just upset because the movement has sort of been tainted in their eyes.
Yes.
From like really where it came from. Which was just to like, be gay people and like be allowed to get married and like be openly in love. Yeah. Like, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. No. Right? So that, you know. But, yeah, the train has gone full steam ahead.
It's full steam ahead.
A different track.
They're going bonkers. You know, it's like the Christina Aguilera thing, right? And I ended up getting into multiple large debates with people actually defending...
I'm so shocked.
It's crazy.
Shocked.
It's crazy. But so Christina Aguilera wearing a green strap-on and having someone jerk it off, and her jerking it off, and this being billed as a family-friendly event, I cannot say at this point that it makes any sense to assume that that was a mistake on LA Pride's part. While you may not have little tiny children there at 11 p.m., you could easily have tweens and young teenagers there who are going to be deeply affected by an event that, by their own admittance, was propaganda to stand against the bill in Florida, which means they were fighting to get gender ideology and sexual content into grades kindergarten to 3. So it was a propaganda event, literally, targeting young children in this way. And while we, like, you know, Pride LA cannot say there were no kids there because they invited children there. So now we don't know.
Well, it would be like someone videotaping the drag brunch that we saw and not videotaping the part that our kids walked by and got shocked. Yeah. And saying, well, based upon the video that I saw no kids there, so I'm going to believe that there were no kids there.
That's right.
And you're like, what? Right. Like, you know, it's...
You know, it's sort of like what happened with Lil Nas X, right? Lil Nas X was marketed to children. He did a kid's book called Old Country Road. There's videos of him doing readings to the kids. So he gathered a fan base of children. And then all of a sudden, he puts out a video where he is dancing sexually as a gay man. He is giving Satan a lap dance. He is bending over and symbolically at least being penetrated by Satan. Hypersexual. And this is another, you know, I got into a debate with someone trying to defend that. And they ended up trying to say, but there's lots, you know, why are you such a bigot? There's lots of sexual content that's not gay out there. And I'm like, that's wrong too.
That's what we're talking
about.
Oh,
so your problem is just that there's too much sexuality in general? Yes, that's my issue. And so the issue with Lil Nas X, this is a good example that gathering a fan base of children and then doing hypersexual adult content, well, how do you think all these kids on the internet are not going to stumble across someone they now idolize giving Satan a lap dance? The problem is not that it's hyper gay, it's that it's hypersexual. Well, it's and he is marketed to children.
It's interesting because previously, like, I mean, I think there have been, like, people who work with children who end up being pedophiles. And that, you know, we've seen that time and time again for a long time. Yeah. But... No, I just lost my train of thought. So it's not important.
Okay. Well,
I think I'm getting tired.
Yeah, so your energy is maxing out. So let's wrap it up. Let's be true.
My left brain needs food.
She's powering down.
Do you see how that can happen?
Human design.
Human design. Left brains, you need to eat regularly, or you actually lose like brain mass and brain function.
Right. So Amanda is literally losing her cognition.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I'm hungry as heck right now, but I'm not losing my cognition. I could actually go on and yammer for another hour. Also because I have like, throat things going on. I have access to that. Interesting.
No, but my brain will actually stop. Like I was saying to Simon yesterday,
it did. It stopped in the middle of an idea.
I will, like, not be able to formulate thoughts. Like my and this is a whole thing in the primary health system. But if you're not nourishing your vehicle, your body properly, if you're not in the right environment, then you can't have your outer authority in alignment either. So like what I say to you all, like in through my outer authority, will just stop. Because I don't have the physical energy for it anymore.
Yeah, your
so
vehicle is just like, nope. Well, we could do an episode on that.
Shuts off.
We could and should do an episode on that.
Allowing that.
Well, so to wrap up, what I really want to button with is to say that if you're a more right-wing person, if you identify more on the right, make sure that you are stopping hetero examples of children being sexually groomed as well. Not just going after woke stuff, but if you have a strip club in your neighborhood that has all this adult sexual content on the outside of it, say something to them, as well as speaking out against the drag queens. Okay, make sure that your bias is not blinding you to that. For example, we have a strip club in our neighborhood, but they keep it absolutely private what it really is. Our kids walk by it every day. They have no idea, and that's how it should be. If we're having public space means family friendly, it means accessible to kids. So if you're on the right, make sure that you're calling out that stuff as well. If you're on the left, I'd say go follow Gays Against Groomers. Go read the Flashing Green Substack. Go listen to the extremely left-wing gay and lesbian people that are speaking out against this and are calling it grooming. That's I think important for people on the left who don't understand what's going on to expand their view. I shared a video in my stories a couple days ago where it was a white straight guy arguing with someone at Pride about trans kids, about transitioning trans kids, and he got called out by a left-wing gay man being like, you do not speak for me, and I don't support young girls getting mastectomies. And you saw the shock in this like straight white guy's face because he was out there just repeating a script. He wasn't really being true with the person that was with him. So, there's a lot of nuance here, and this is the reason why we wanted to do this episode, because the sexualization of children is rampant in our culture across the political spectrum, and when we really bring that to the surface, it actually ends a lot of the division between right and left, because in the end, I think there are a lot of people that want to protect children, and I think that can be a unifying point, and that we should all really focus more on that. So, yeah, that was the reason we wanted to pull it together today. And I think that's it. So, thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Finding Free Thought podcast. We'll see you next time.
Bye.